Alright, so this is going to be a video, not so quick video, on how to get facial animations working in Delta. This is because these games use morph targets for the face, and Blender, those are called shape keys. But this will work for any game that uses morph targets. So obviously in Blender you're going to need your head. We're going to first work on Ocelot's in-game head, and then we'll work on his cutscene head. But if you open up F-Model, you find your character. We're going to do Ocelot, and we go down to his mesh folder. Inside of it, we can see his head, and if we open it up, and we go over to the Morph Target section over here, we can see the different morph targets that he has. Make sure that you export the model, find wherever it is, and then you're going to need the PSK add-on for Blender. So you're going to need Blender 4.0, anything above 4.0 you're going to need as of today, which is September 4th. 4.5, Blender 4.5 still has a couple of issues, so I wouldn't suggest using that. But you could just look up PSK add-on Blender, and this Blender extensions website will have the one that you need. Actually, this one says Blender 4.4, and I'm using 4.2. But one of these does work. Yep, here we go. So this is the one that I use because I'm using Blender 4.2. Just make sure that, like, in the features, it tells you that it can import your morph targets. Let's see. Anyway, it's in one of these. So this is the one I think I'm using. Go ahead and add in the Blender add-on like usual. That way, when you import your character, let's see, for example, if I go and find where his head is, it gives me the option to import my shape keys. So just make sure this is like the default settings. I haven't touched anything here, so it should by default import your shape keys. And then when you import, you're gonna get your shape keys here. So what shape keys do is that they kind of like they use the edit mode of whatever program they created this head in to kind of sculpt the head or create a new shape, and then that's used in game. Because if you even try to move this character, let's say in pose mode, it doesn't use weights like usual. So if we go, let's say, all the way to our neck bone, and then we try to move that, we can see that we have this issue with our mesh, and that's because this game technically doesn't, or this mesh doesn't use normal, vertex weight groups. Instead, it uses these morph targets, and you can go ahead and test out how these work. Let's say if you went to solid mode, let me just turn off the skeleton, and if we change the value over here, we can see the mesh moving. You could also see over here that I've already split Ocelot's head because we're going to need to do that before we import into the program that's going to allow us to use a custom head. So for this, I already split him apart. You can split him apart by material or do it manually. I did it by material, so I've got rid of his head, his hair, his eyelashes, eyebrows. I believe this is his mouth, and then his eyes. Once you just have his actual head, you're going to have to do one more thing. Just kind of move the mesh to where you can see the inside of the head, and he will have like a mouth pouch. Just make sure you get rid of that, because most of the time the mesh that you might be bringing in might not have it, or it might be weird. So I found that it's best to get rid of that mouth pouch. You can delete it. Really, there's no difference like when you see a character in game with that mouth pouch, so you're okay to get rid of it. once you just have Ocelot's head, you can go ahead and just select it, and we have to export it out as OBJ because this is what the program that we're going to use uses in terms of its mesh file. So we're gonna choose export OBJ. I'm gonna save this on my desktop. I'm just gonna call it Ocelot. Just make sure that you choose selection only, or else it's gonna take everything in the Blender, like in the sidebar, not just anything that's in the viewport. So just make sure you choose selection only. The rest of the settings, these are just default. You don't have to touch any of these. So just hit export. And then we have to do the same thing, just have the head mesh for a custom mesh. I already did that. I'm going to use Hayne from NewJeans. And I have her mesh right here. Again, I got rid of her, if you want solid mode, of her mouth pouch as well. So we're good here. So I'm going to go ahead and export her out as well in OBJ format. Call this Hayne. Alright, so once we have that exported, we're going to need a program called Wrap 3D. If you don't have this already, you can just look up Faceform, or what I did, I literally just looked up Wrap 3D and it came up. You could also look up like Russian 3D scanner or something. It's going to lead you to the same website and the same program. It gives you a 30-day free trial. Obviously, I'm not going to show you here, but there are ways to make sure that, a program lasts longer than 30 days. So once you have that downloaded and set up, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And when you open up, it should look like this. This uses nodes. So the way you use this, it tells you right here how to move the viewport. You're going to use the Alt key to move stuff around. But in terms of setting up our mesh, we're going to do it right over here in this graph area where it tells you to either right click. So I'm going to right click, and we're going to load in our meshes first. So this is going to be load geometry. And we're going to load in Ocelots first. Put it in my desktop. And you could, if you want, you could rename these. So I'm going to call this Ocelot, just so we can see what we're doing. And then we're going to also load in our Hayne head. And then we could also rename this. Alright, once it's renamed, just go ahead and scroll back a little bit so you can actually see the head. Alright, so we have both of our meshes here, but we're going to add in something just so we can see our Hayne mesh, our custom mesh, a little bit better. So I'm just going to hit right click again, and I'm going to load in her texture, her albedo texture first, her color map. I saved that in this folder, and I loaded her in. Now I don't know if you saw, but technically this is her original face texture, but I have this atlas texture here which combines part of her skin, which was kind of like her collarbone area down here. This is because wrap, technically there is a way to figure out how to use multiple different materials in wrap, but that's a little bit complicated, so I made it easier for myself by doing that in Blender. So there is a thing, there's an add-on called Material Combiner. If we look it up, it's right here. I'll put a link to this, and same thing with the PSK add-on if you don't have that already. But this basically combines multiple different materials into one atlas. The thing is that it will only combine your color map. So in Photoshop, you're going to have to go in, and this is what it will give you. Then if you have, normal maps, occlusions, etc., you're just going to have to place them where the original atlas texture is. But it's pretty useful. It can combine, like, let's say if you don't want to deal with, 15 different materials, you can combine them. It will keep the the size of the texture. So just make sure that you're not combining, a bunch of 4K textures, or else you're going to have a giant map, and certain games can't load in textures that are too big. So just keep that in mind. But once you combine materials, it's going to be easier to use wrap. If not, you're going to have issues when we do the texture transfer later on. So for some reason, if you have, a head and then, the bottom of the neck or the chest areas, a separate texture, I would suggest using this material combiner add-on. It's really easy. All you have to do is just click on the head, update material list, and then save atlas to wherever you want it, and it will automatically create a combined material for you. Alright, so I loaded in my texture. If I hide Ocelot for a second and I choose my geometry node, I can turn off wireframe just so we also get a little bit more of a difference between these. Alright, so next thing we have to load into here is what's called a select point pairs node. What this does is it just basically lets you know what wrap we'll use. So if we go into the visual editor, we can see both of them here. We can sync views, that way when we move one, we move both. And this is what you would use if you want to wrap by hand. So the way wrap works is that you designate like little points on the model that will be used in the geometry that you're going to mold into your custom head. We don't need to do this by hand. There's a way to do it automatically, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to add in another node called fast wrapping, and this is the way that we're going to set this up. So yellow to yellow, we're going to click that there. This first node is our floating geometry. This is what's going to be moved into our custom mesh, so that's going to be Ocelot, because we want to use Ocelot's original head. That way we keep our blend shapes, our morph targets. And then our fixed geometry is going to be our custom head. So this basically means that our Ocelot head is going to morph and shape into our custom head. Alright, so once we're on this node and we're in the visual editor tab, I'm just going to move this around a little bit just so I can see kind of her ears when it starts working. And before we hit compute, we just want to change a couple of things. Make sure that normalized sampling is on, and our sampling type, we're going to use this Euclidean version instead of topological. I've noticed that with topological, sometimes you get like vertex strips, so Euclidean kind of helps normalize that. So you can go ahead and hit compute, and as long as both of your heads are high poly, this should work. I can see that the eyes look like the eye sac kind of bulged out. So what we can do, because I'm pretty sure this is Ocelot's mesh that did this, we can go back into Blender, select his head again, and we can get rid of his eye sac. So we're just going to hit L, and we're going to select by seam. We're going to separate that out and get rid of that. Alright, so now we're going to just re-export him out as an OBJ. We'll call this new Ocelot. Alright, so back into wrap, I'm just going to reload our new mesh. If you go into our viewport 3D, I can see the new mesh in there. Select point pairs, same thing, we're still synced. And then our fast wrapping, it will automatically reset if we load in a new mesh. So we still have our same settings. We can hit compute again, and there we go. We got rid of that issue right there. So you can just kind of look around your mesh. Looks like it did our ears correctly. It also did our mouth just fine, and our lips and our nose. So it looks good enough to me. So I'm going to go ahead and export this out. We're going to add in a new one called Save Geometry. And when we connect that in, I'm going to save this again on desktop, and I'm going to call this Wrapped Hane. Make sure that before you save, you click Save Normals, and you hit Compute, and you're going to see it load at the bottom. Once that's done, we're not completely done yet with wrap. We're going to have to add in and transfer over our textures, because if we leave this as is, I can show you in Blender actually. If we load in this Hane model as is, it's going to be an OBJ. If we load her in, we see we have a little bit of issue with our mesh. That's not too bad. But if we load in our textures, it's still going to use, or actually I don't know if it is. Yeah, it's going to be using this ocelot texture. So for some reason, let's say you had on your ocelot head, if you go ahead and add in textures on him. Let's see, have it in here, content. If you load in his texture, this is Ocelot's regular texture, but because it's using the same, almost the same head. But if we go back to this, and we copy it over, and we add it here, it's gonna end up using Ocelot's regular texture. Obviously, this isn't what our original Hane head looked like, so we're gonna have to go ahead and transfer over textures over here. So to do that, we're gonna add in a new node called Transfer Texture. And the way we set this up, I believe source geometry is going to be Hane, so our custom mesh, and then our target geometry is going to be this fast wrap node instead of ocelot. So we're going to go ahead and connect this right there. So to see this, we're going to go to our viewport 2D. This is where we see our textures. And we can see that our Hane mesh is, our UV is overlaid correctly here. And then if we go to transfer texture, we can see that she has now Ocelot's UV right there. So that worked. Here you could also change your resolution. I'll make this a 2K texture. And then we can add in another node before we save, called extrapolate image. This kind of just fills in the open spots on the model. And lastly, we're just gonna hit save. We're gonna save image and go ahead and save this wherever you'd like. I'm gonna call this, I'm gonna create a new folder actually. This new face C. Then go ahead and hit compute, and it's gonna save really quick. You could go ahead and do this for the rest of your textures if you want. You can go ahead and add in your normal map, and it's going to go through the same process of transferring that texture over, extrapolating it, and you can save it. But I would rather use in-game textures for the non-color maps, like our normal map and our occlusion, specular, etc. detail maps. Obviously Ocelot is a man, so his textures are a little bit rough for a female character that I'm using. So I found with my Minji model that I used over Snake that Eve's normal maps and her non-color maps work fine for this. So I'm going to go ahead, since I already have her mesh in, I'm going to go ahead and add in the new texture I created. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up Eve's textures. That should be right over here. Right here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use her normal map. And again, just set up textures like usual. We're going to use the principal BSDF node simply because it's simple and there's no reason to get, too complicated in terms of how you set up textures in Blender. But you can see now it has a nice, AAA game normal map. And then we can go ahead and create or add in the rest of the things. This game uses SASR for the like non-color, roughness occlusion maps. I think I already extracted those. Alright, so here I decided, I already did this beforehand, but I split Eve's SASR texture into her specular, O, and R maps. So this is just to use in Blender. You're not going to use this when you put it into the Unreal Engine when you're creating your mod. This is just so we can see what it looks like before we put it in game. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in. Alright, so this is what our texture or our mesh should look like when we put it in game. Obviously we saw if we go into our solid view mode that our mesh looks a little bit like crumbled up. You could, before you go ahead and assign this as a shape key to Ocelot's head, you can go ahead and not add in any vertices, but go ahead and go into sculpt mode and smooth stuff out if you would like. Alright, so I went ahead and I just did a little bit of sculpting on her face, kind of smooth out that stuff. So now, this is the important part. This is how you're actually going to get the mesh to move in game. So you just got to go over, make sure that you have your Ocelot head, and we're going to make a duplicate of it first. I don't think I have that here, do I? No. Okay. So I'm just going to hit Shift-D, create a duplicate of his head. And this is the duplicate we're going to use. So I'm just going to put that this is our edited mesh. And before we can apply our wrapped head as a shape key, we need to make sure that we apply our rotation. For some reason, when you import from a wrap, the OBJ gets rotated 90 degrees. So we just have to hit Control A and apply all transforms. That way it's in the correct spot. Alright, so with our custom head selected first, we're going to shift select Ocelot, that way he's that lighter orange. And then we can go over to our shape keys, which are right here. And then we can hit this down arrow and we're going to hit join as shapes. What that does is that it creates a new shape key in the shape of our custom head. So if we hit the shape key and we change the value, it will take the shape of our custom head. And what we can do then is that we can take our custom head and we can rename it. That way it has the, I don't know if it will actually. So we'll do, we'll go into shading. We'll select everything and we're going to copy it over here. There we go. So if we hide this, now our Ocelot head is in the shape of our custom head. If you go into our shape keys, we can see that we still have all of our shape keys here that are working. You can go ahead and you can just try them out. But the thing is that it should work because all we're doing is just changing where our vertex or vertices are for our ocelot head, which is why this should work. So once you have all that done, unfortunately, if you try to export it like it is now, it will not work because you just added in a shape key that the mesh originally did not have. So to get it working, what we need to do is that we need to make sure that all of our other shape keys are turned off and our custom or wrapped head is turned on. And by turned on, I mean that the value has gone up. That way the mesh has now taken our custom head shape. I'm pretty sure there is a way to do this using, the default Blender tools, but I found that to be too difficult to figure out. So instead, there is a plugin called Cats. It's used for like VR chat, I believe. But if we look up Cats Blender plugin, we can go ahead and choose the unofficial one, simply because this I think holds old releases. So if we hit the plus 100 releases, you're just gonna have to scroll down and find the Blender version that you have. So I have 4.2, so that I would go ahead and download this one. I've done so already. I've edited it in. So the only thing left is to actually use it. You don't have to do anything on the actual add-on tab here. It should automatically add in an option in our shape key section right here. So all we have to do is go ahead and hit this down arrow, and you're going to get this option right here that's called apply selected shape key to bases. So what this does is that it will take the shape and it will add it into our base, which is this morph base up here. So if we go ahead and select it, it's going to go ahead and add it. So I don't know if you read, but if it says right here that when it adds it, it's going to go ahead and take what it added and it's going to turn it off, which is what it did there. So now if we go ahead and just hide this for now, this is going to be our base, and the rest of our shape keys should still work. Obviously this is one that wasn't in the original, so we're going to go ahead and delete it, and you're all done. You've created shape keys. Now when you export, just keep these settings in mind. Obviously go ahead and finish modding whatever else you have to do, add in the eyes, the mouth. If you're going to do anything else, go ahead and do it. Only thing you cannot do is add in more vertices, because then you're going to get issues with your shape keys. So make sure that you do any edits you have to do to your custom head before you go into wrap. That way it is fine to use when you go ahead and add it as a shape key here. But I'm not going to show you how to mod or how to set up everything else. You can look up another tutorial, or you should know how to do that. I'm just going to show you the export settings that you're going to need. So go ahead and we're going to export this as FBX. Make sure obviously when you do it, your armature is called armature. Sorry, that's spelled wrong. I guess we're just gonna export this. Go ahead and export as FBX, and we're gonna change a couple of settings. Go ahead and save it wherever. We're gonna limit it to selected objects, or else it's gonna take again everything inside of this Blender file. We're gonna select only our armature and our mesh. Keep scale as 1 unless you didn't change your scene units. So for example, I always set my scene units as 0.01 and our length as centimeters, simply because this is what most Unreal Engine games want you to do, because when the mesh is put into Blender, this is going to be the correct size. So that way I can leave this as default as 1. Next, in geometry, I always choose smoothing as face. And right here, you're going to have the option to apply modifiers. This is what you would normally want to have on when you're doing a mesh that actually uses vertex groups, but this uses shape keys instead. And if you hover over it, it will tell you that if you choose this, you will not be able to export shape keys. So make sure you turn it off. In armature, we're going to turn off add leaf bones and animation. Then we can go ahead and export, and we can go ahead and open up our Unreal project next. Alright, once this is open, you're going to go ahead and, let me this here and our F model over here. Go ahead and follow the folder directory or the folder structure for where you're going to put this. I'm not going to do that because I'm just going to show you the import settings, but you would follow this, and then you go ahead and import in your FBX to wherever you saved it, which is right here. So we're going to have a few options. First, obviously, you're going to know if you did this correctly, but if you have an armature and your mesh has an armature modifier, which is this blue wrench, you're automatically going to get the skeletal mesh checked on. So you're good there. Obviously, you're importing a mesh, so that's already checked on as well. I believe as default, this is going to be in geometry only. You want it to be geometry and skinning weights. Skeleton, if this is your first time importing the head, and if you don't have any other skeletons within the folder that you're going to put this in, this should be empty. That's fine. Just go ahead and scroll down, and when you see this import morph targets, obviously we want that checked on. Another thing is our normal import method, I believe, is going to be compute. We want it to be import both our normals and our tangents. So go ahead and select that. Then you're just going to hit import all, and your mesh is right there. Oh, one thing that I forgot. Let's go ahead and delete this. And let me re-import. I prefer to not have materials or textures imported. So if you scroll down just a little bit more, under the material tab, instead of create new materials, we're going to go ahead and choose do not create materials, and then this would be ticked on. I just untick that. That way I can choose what textures I put in. This is because Unreal Engine will only import certain textures within the principal BSDF node. So it will sometimes not read all of the nodes that you put in, and if you use a different BSDF node other than principled, it will not read the textures that are imported in. So it's just easier just to not import any of this at all and import it by hand yourself. But yeah, from here on out, you just follow the regular Unreal Engine method as to, how to set up and how to export and how to pack. All right.